say I won't. I'm gonna tell you, it does. It changes your whole afternoon after you've had a bag of TB. And I don't mean for the worse. I mean for the better. I mean for the better. I wanted to see this because I wanted. Oh, first crack of the sun kissed. I really wanted to run this by Ralph because.
Talk to me.
You know what I was thinking about too is I was thinking about technology because you've worked, security systems, all digital. Alex, you did that. All digital, all security stuff set up for cameras, doorbell cameras, alarm systems, all that. Now you're doing solar and all that. One of the things, because I get these drop downs like every day. I actually set several different I can't say Twitter anymore, X accounts. Right. Several X accounts to my cousin was asking, like, you don't say retweet anymore. They just changed it to repost like Instagram threads. Really? It's reposts, yeah. So I follow several of these accounts on X that are covering this technology every day and like what's happening. One of the crazy things it said 3,000 and some new AI tools in the last like 3 weeks have been developed.
That's ridiculous.
But, I don't even know, because when I talk about AI to people, even though like I'm into it and like I'm looking at the tools, when I talk to people about it, sometimes their eyes gloss over.
Yeah, you just get like a blank.
It's just kind of like, yeah, that's all cool. I don't know anything of what that means.
They think like Terminator.
Yeah, exactly.
I tried to explain it to my great uncle who's just been introduced to the internet, and so like that was a tough conversation.
Internet.
Yeah.
Is that the one in
Is that
that's
like
right.
the interweb? It's like it's kind of like that.
Is that like on a CD-ROM? But I was going to ask Ralph about this because you actually have to go in to people's homes and explain to them, not just sell them on the product, but explain to them how it's going to function for them, how it's going to save them money and whatever else. You had to do that for the digital stuff on security side and now on the solar side. With everything that's happening, technology is moving forward so fast. How much do you think the average person really understands like technology?
Very little.
Very little.
Very
For real?
little. Very, very little.
I mean, what do you see when you're talking to them?
I see people have trouble with the when I was back at Vivint, I would see people have issues with the security app, even though it was super user friendly. I mean, not even knowing like how to go in and check camera feeds, not knowing how to navigate as far as like rebooting, resetting, none of that stuff. I mean,
It's beyond their grasp.
Well, especially like the clientele that I don't. For some reason, all elderly women loved you, and so like you had to go into these elderly women's homes and explain to them.
On this podcast, what other demographic loved me?
Let's be honest. They loved you for some reason. You were like a magnet
You did get asked to stay for dinner a lot.
for the lesbians.
Yeah, we ate a lot.
Yeah, you did.
A
You
lot
did.
of brisket.
Yeah. But I mean, lesbians can understand it, but the elderly women.
It was.
You spend a lot more time explaining.
I tried not to. It was just a lot of follow-ups, a lot of coming back, answering a lot of texts of just very, very simple things. Like, Ralph, how do I check this camera again? It's like you push the camera icon.
So I mean, people they're not getting it. I mean, like the average person is probably not very techie when it comes
At
to
all.
that. That's why too. Like when with AI being developed, you keep hearing all these things like, oh, people's jobs are going to get taken because of AI. AI is going to have people out of work and everything. People don't even know enough about how to use AI to use it to take other people's jobs.
That's right.
I mean, that's why, looking at this, because, being a preacher, you look at it from the Bible prophecy side a lot. Like, you're looking at things like, digital currency and payment systems and AI and all the stuff that we're seeing happen technologically that could facilitate prophecies. But I don't look at it and think to myself like, oh man, it's bringing the job market to an end.
It's interesting. I just watched a podcast with Theo Vaughn and Jordan Peterson that they just put out, and they were talking about like the whole thing was about AI up until like the halfway point. And so like the conversation was, like, do you think it's going to take jobs? And Jordan Peterson said it can take some jobs, but the demand for live events is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
Especially with like deep fake.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like talking about like live shows for comedy, you know, like, I mean, we think about it, church services and stuff like
Yeah.
that. People are going to crave something that's not fake. And that
That's true.
they can prove I was there at that event and it's not fake.
That was
Right.
something that they were talking about on Rogan, because he was saying that like through the whole COVID experience, that the virtual comedy shows proved that like there's certain things that can never be replaced by non-in-person experiences. So he was saying like there's really only one or two comedians that actually did a good job and had people say like, oh, I would watch that show again.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing a ton of research on AI to try and like help with workflow. So I've been getting like all kinds of reels and stuff into the algorithm. And I watched one this morning that was interesting, and they were saying they think it's going to be less like, is it going to take people's jobs? And the larger concern with AI should be, because so many people don't know how to use tech, that it's going to open up so many more people to scams, because people don't even understand
That's
that
true.
AI is like
Yes.
real.
Right.
So they're not going to think like, oh, this isn't Ted calling me saying this. They're going
Right.
to be like, why did Ted just call me and rip me up?
Right.
And it's going to be like, because they wouldn't even imagine that it wasn't
Well,
you calling.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
I just played it on the podcast that I did with Lilia.
Yeah.
It's so real. I
Tell,
cloned.
I mean, if people don't know, you
I can
cloned
play
my
it right
voice.
now. Yeah.
Like you basically cloned my voice by uploading my YouTube videos to an AI website.
Yep.
Which perfect. I mean, I listened to it and thought that sounds like me a lot. Like it could have fooled me. I didn't remember saying it.
So like late at night when you were asleep, I cloned your voice.
You came into the room with a cloning tool.
I
was like-
grabbed one of your chromosomes.
It was like the Little Mermaid. She's like, keep singing.
No, so when you were
Probably
sleeping,
the first time on a podcast with four guys that Little Mermaid was referenced ever. But God bless.
here's what I did. I just put your voice from just your broadcast, and it literally only took 2 minutes of it. So I just had to screen record 2 minutes of it, and then I put it into this thing and typed out whatever I wanted. And so then I texted Lilia, hey, I'm sorry to break it to you. It's just not working out. We're going to have to let you go. I talked to Pastor Ted, and then I sent her this.
Told you.
Hold on, wait.
Yeah, it's true what Alex told you. We're going to have to let you go.
And then,
You're just like too tall, like way too tall. It's hard to find a desk you can actually sit at.
which is like,
That's realistic.
that's very realistic.
Even like the emulation of the ups and downs
Yeah.
of the different
The dynamics.
Yeah, the dynamics of the voice. It's not robotic sounding.
And
It's
that's
mind
within
blowing.
a year.
Yeah, that's
Like
exactly.
1 year of this really being in the marketplace
I don't even
to
think
use.
that tool has been around for a year.
No, it
So that's
hasn't.
what I mean. Like it's going to be. I mean, you look now. Even all the podcast episodes. There's a whole podcast episode out for JRE right now that never happened. It was a
I saw
complete
that.
AI podcast. Yeah, I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
It's a fake episode from start to finish.
With who?
It might have been Elon. I don't remember who was on, but I'll
it's
send it
crazy,
to you after.
though.
It's a whole
It's crazy.
fake episode. It's like 2 hours long.
It's
No,
a-
wasn't it Trump?
It was a deep fake episode.
Maybe.
Right.
I heard him say that half the clips that are out right now are fake. Like he's like 90% of the endorsement clips you see that I do aren't me.
Wow.
They're just people AIing me pushing their product.
You
Well,
know
that's-
who that benefits? Or who like the younger generation? Like think about if you were a kid in school and you had got in trouble, and they like, hey, I want to talk to your parents. That would be
That's
You literally
right.
could.
that would be.
Yeah, I got him. I got him right here.
Yeah.
on the
I would
phone.
have gotten a lot less whippings.
And there's tools now where it's not just like type it out and then it says it. You can live change your voice.
Yeah,
It's like it's real time.
right.
I forgot what Jordan Peterson was saying, that like he had talked to someone on the phone that he knew, but
Right.
it wasn't who he knew.
Right.
And
But he
like-
thought it was.
Yeah, he thought it was.
Well, it's like, look at what Google just did. I mean, this was like now it's been like a year and a half probably. But Google, when they were developing their digital assistant for people, when you schedule stuff, like you can literally just say to Google Assistant, like, hey, schedule me a hair appointment for next Tuesday at such and such a salon
Yeah.
between the hours of 2:30 and 4:30. I just want a cut and color. That's all I need, or whatever. I just need a cut, no color. And so it showed the back end at their keynote, and it showed how after you said that, yes, the thing goes now and just says okay, but then it calls the salon. A digital assistant calls the salon and starts to talk to a real person. And the digital assistant sounds like a real person with even the pauses was like, you know, it's like, so is this for a cut and color? And then they're just like, no, just a cut today. And it's like all the things you told it, but it's interacting like a real person. Once it confirms, it then puts it on your calendar. So it's like having a you know, it's like that. Remember that movie with Will Smith? I don't know why I pointed to you personally. Hey, do you remember that movie?
I gotta guess.
Is that iRobot?
Yeah, that's iRobot. You remember that? Do you remember that?
Ralph, you would know.
Do you remember?
I do remember iRobot.
So they're like, do you remember what Bill Gates said? But it's like that. But when you said that thing about people will start craving live experiences, that's why I believe that will never be something that like where the church is drifting in that direction.
Oh.
Like I don't think like even now, there's very few things you can do. You know, we have like online campuses, right? Where the people are just watching on a screen. They've found though that you still have to have a live band in house for it to work. Like all these campuses that do the pastor on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
They have to have a live worship team there or people won't, the campus won't work.
It's the weirdest experience to be like in a room full of people that are trying to worship and it's just like a video on the screen.
Yeah. Well, that's what they found. There has to be
strange.
some kind of a live element that they can interact with for it to actually function. Because if it doesn't, that they've found in their own research, the campuses don't work out. So I don't think that it'll ever get to a place. Somebody said this recently, and it was obviously during COVID. They were like, we're going to have to rethink in the future what Hebrews 10:25 really means about don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Gatherings and assemblies will look much different than we think they do in the future. And they were alluding to the fact it's going to start to become online gatherings and app gatherings. I don't think it's going to be that.
No?
I don't think so. Because you can't even do the things we're supposed to do if it's an online gathering. You can't lay hands on people. You can't anoint with oil. You can't take communion or any of that stuff.
Well, for most churches,
They don't do it anyway.
They don't do it anyway, so it wouldn't change their experience. Like honestly, like you go to a seeker-sensitive church, you come in, nobody speaks to you, you sit down, you have total anonymity, nobody knows your name, you watch a video announcement, you listen to the worship, and then you just you listen to the sermon, then they conclude in a prayer, and then you walk out.
Yeah.
Text in for salvation.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not
Is
even
that real?
Yeah.
texting for salvation is a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
There's no altar
You don't
calls.
come up front. There's not like
Yeah, they don't do altar
other
calls.
than the vein of Christianity we're in. Most people don't do like come up front and confess salvation in front of the. That's not like
The
a thing.
farthest most churches go is just raise your hand. God sees that hand.
Yeah. And that is. And then it's like, hey, we'll have after everyone leaves, we'll have people left here at the front if you want to talk to somebody. Like that. I'll see that a lot.
right.
Actually, we did a thing where we went down to one of these larger churches that was in like one of those type of denominations. That's exactly how it functioned. It was like, hey, as everyone's leaving, if you'd like to stick around, we'll have people waiting at the front. You can talk to them if you want to know more about this life or whatever that might be. But there's not like you said, there's not a call for repentance or to make a public decision for Christ or anything like that. But I think those things matter. Like I think obviously we're not going to have that where it's going to be just like, hey, we all just stay home, and I can't wait to attend a virtual online gathering of believers. Like, even saying that turns my stomach. Like
It's crazy to watch that like lethargic mindset creep through, and get into like actual Christianity now. Because I was thinking when you were saying that about like the story with Chris Farley, where he went to like that Catholic priest and like confessed his sins to him.
Yeah.
And the guy was just like, did the thing of like say your Hail Marys and go home, like offered
died
no
the
help
next
for
day.
him, and then he died. But you watch like now that same lethargic, almost like we can't do anything for you attitude has crept all the way over to like even some churches that would confess to be like charismatic and Pentecostal.
Oh, yeah.
Have that like we can't help you attitude towards their Sunday services.
No
Like,
question.
raise your hand, God will help you. We can do nothing for you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's the opposite.
and we won't even try to do anything for you.
Yeah.
Is the sad thing. So I mean, like when I'm looking at that's why this stuff interests me a lot, because even though, we know it's going to be. We know that technology is going to have to play some kind of a role in like the end times, because for me, I look at things like Revelation 13. I don't see any way that you're going to facilitate a one world economy, a one world, being able to buy it, limitations of buying and selling anything.
Yeah.
Like I don't see that functioning without technology.
Yeah,
digital
I
currency.
bet hundreds of years ago when they're reading that, they thought it was going to be like an authoritarian police force that
Right.
would like stop them from buying and selling. But now it's
You don't
just
have
shut
to
off
have
your
that.
bank card.
Right. That's exactly right.
So,
Have you
like,
been
we're
to
seeing,
Whole
like,
Foods lately?
What do you mean?
Have you been over to Whole Foods? I like
make
never
it a
go
point
there, but
never to go.
I went there last week with Heather, and she was like, "We got to put our Amazon number in when we check out,"
yeah.
and then it asked, "Do you want to pay with your hand?"
Yeah.
That's the
Have
first
that
time
now
I've
where
seen
you
it. Like
Yeah.
it's the biometric scan, but I've not seen that out in public yet. I've heard about it obviously online, but
Yeah.
I was blown away.
Now
can-
I
there
had
or hospitals, I think, do it as well.
Yeah.
Where you can just scan your hand.
well, now they're doing it with boarding planes, right? What's the thing they're doing now with the boarding of planes, where they do it's biometric boarding now? They're advertising it in the terminals.
Is that
Really?
clear? Did
No,
Clear,
no,
like,
not
upgrade to
clear.
biometrics?
But
It's
also-
airlines. Actual airlines are doing it at the gate, and there's like biometric scanning for boarding.
I didn't know that.
What was the thing that you mentioned? Whole Foods, because a lot of people I'm sure didn't know that Amazon bought Whole Foods. I think
Right.
they paid $1 billion and bought
Right, yeah.
bought Whole Foods. But I heard about one that they were doing that was kind of like, where it's like if they're doing research and development, they'll do the test stores to see if it works out. They had some way of doing it, and I don't know if it's like I don't know how they facilitate this, but if there's some kind of a specific chip or something in each product that identifies it or something, but they had it set up in the test store where you could just take things off the shelf, put them in your basket, and you never had to go to a checkout. When you walk out the door, it charges your Amazon
Charges your
account.
Prime
3 months ago when I was in New York City, I walked into one of those stores not knowing it was. So it was like a Starbucks combined with like some sort of like market. And all I did was you had to walk in. And since, all cards have the chip and NFC, all you had to do was either tap your phone as you walk in or tap your card as you walk in. You walk in. There's Starbucks there. You could literally just order. They don't have to ring you up, just like that. And then you pick something off the thing. And then it was weird. It felt so illegal just walking out. I'm like walking out with like a sandwich and a drink, and I'm like, am I good to go? He's like, yeah, just go. So I just walk out.
Yeah.
And then I see the charge on my phone.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think that's how it's going to function. Because how in the world, I mean, if there's people that are still thinking like, no, there's going to be some sort of a tattoo on your hand or a tattoo on your forehead that they're going to check for before you buy it. It's like that'll never work. I mean, that's not going to happen like that. And I think we've already seen, like you guys have seen it over the last couple of years, of a form of that, a portion of that in existence. I mean, when GoFundMe held all the money back from the truckers in Canada when they were doing the convoy and protesting, that was a sign of what's to come. Like the fact that they can just withhold your money because they don't like your cause.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what if they did that to churches and said like, we don't like Christianity. We're withholding all digital payments from your church.
Yeah. And what's interesting is it doesn't even have to be, because there'll be people who say, well, that's not the government doing that. That's a private corporation. They could do whatever they want. But now that we've seen all this stuff with like ESG scores and everything, them being tied to like this complete, global economy and stuff.
Tell the people in TV land about ESG scores.
ESG, economic, social, government. No, I don't know. I don't know. ESG. So basically,
Google it. Jamie,
I
put it
don't
up
know
on the screen.
I don't know the actual acronym, but it's like a set of values that all these BlackRock, Vanguard, all these massive companies that own basically every company in the world have to, like, you have a credit score if you're a business. The more you agree with their
Values.
their values, the
higher your ESG
Yep.
score is.
The higher your ESG score is, the more loans you can get. Like,
People don't.
As a
Environmental,
business.
social governance.
yeah.
There you go. Environmental, social governance.
Yeah.
So think about it. BlackRock is probably one of the largest corporations in the world, and no one knows who it is.
That's ever existed.
Like there's some people that have heard of BlackRock, but most people have never heard of BlackRock ever.
I'm gonna look up I'm
They
just
have
gonna start
controlling
listing.
shares, and I want to say it was
Yeah.
something like 500 or 600 companies, major like
Like
Apple,
Fortune 500
Amazon,
companies.
yeah, they own the majority share. Like they're the largest individual shareholders of all these companies.
Good Lord, I didn't even know this. As expected, BlackRock's top equity holdings include America's most established tech companies: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. They hold 18% of Fox, 16% of CBS, Comcast, NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, Sky Media Group, 12% of CNN, 12% of Disney. I mean, it's like,
And then there's people like
ooh.
those people that talk like that are conspiracy theorists. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think this one corporation that holds shares in all these major companies that are affecting, the future of the country
That's-
and the world? It's like,
That's what makes me laugh when people are like, "Oh, did you see that thing on Netflix? I'm gonna delete my Net." It's like you think that your $9.99 a month is gonna shake the industry.
I
Like,
know.
you could have everyone could drop Netflix tomorrow, and Netflix could drop off as a company, and companies like BlackRock would just keep on doing what they're doing. Like,
Yeah,
there's nothing
they'll
you
just
can do
put
to
another
affect
company in its place.
Right.
That's right.
It doesn't. It's like a terrorist cell. You know, you cut the head off, but there's another one that rises right up. It's because it's a global thing. That's what the Bible prophesies. It's not a localized thing. It's a global thing. That's why the global elites have this mindset of a new world order and a globalist. We were talking about the other day. Like it's amazing. They don't even hide it. You go to the airport. American Airlines has it on their plaque on the wall. Part of the One World Alliance.
Yeah.
It's in the airport.
I mean, any boarding bridge you go down, it's One World Alliance. Whether it's American, Alaskan,
British Airways,
Qatar.
Yep.
What is it, like all the Bohemian ones?
Yep. Fiji.
Yeah.
All those. Yeah. They all are part of the quote unquote One World Alliance. And it's like, what's all this talk about a new world order and a globalist this and a One World Alliance? It's Bible prophecy.
Yeah.
How do people get past that and think like, oh, that's a bunch of conspiracy theory? It's like, okay. It's like
all these dispensationalists reading their interpretation into the Bible.
Okay, just keep on thinking like that. Then I mean, like your head has to be so far in the sand.
Yeah,
y'all thought I was going a different direction.
yeah.
your head has to
have
be
to edit that one out.
your head has to be so far in the sand if you think that all this stuff is conspiracy theory. It's like it's not. And again, I guess we're just on this topic of technology. I mean, you think all these things are developed only for convenience? Facial recognition software, Face ID, Touch ID, all the stuff, the biometric scanning, and it's not just recognizing a picture of your face. It's like with the LiDAR sensor on the front of your iPhone or whatever. People don't even know that LiDAR is throwing out invisible dots that map the terrain of your face. They know the terrain of your face. I mean, how do you think they were able to you were still able to open your iPhone with a mask on?
That's right.
And all that stuff. It's because they can map the terrain of your face. So all these things that are happening, it's like if you think all these companies just have pure, wonderful, utopian intentions, you've lost your mind. I mean, like,
Did you guys see the Alex Jones clip that he just put out about how he got a phone call from somebody in TSA that he knows, and they went and had coffee, and that TSA was saying that so the video basically says that somebody he knows who's high up in TSA called him and was like, we need to talk so that I can tell you something you need to tell other people. And they said, we just had a meeting that TSA told us that it's going to become a regulation for TSA employees to wear masks again, and that by December they're going to require all people flying to be wearing masks again, and they anticipate that before the first of the year we'll be in full COVID lockdowns again.
Yeah.
So I started looking into I was just reading some of the things online because obviously Alex Jones has like a questionable reputation in regards to whether or not aliens are going to drop in. Yeah,
really?
But,
They're international demons.
I give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's a good guy. So
likes pizza.
But I started looking and there's a lot of people that believe. Like probably the number one thing that I found, other than the fact that there's going to be another COVID variant, is that they believe the government's going to shut the internet down. They're going to find a way to shut the internet down. And they were putting some statistics out, and I don't know how you would prove them, but the death toll that it would cause to shut the internet down just for a couple of weeks is higher than I think we would anticipate.
Yeah, the thing that if you look at it, there's been attempts for so long to try to find a way to regulate the internet. It's such a force. I mean, the internet is such a force.
Yeah.
They've been trying for decades to regulate it in some way, shape, or form. It's just how do you do that? I mean, first of all, you have the dark web.
Yeah.
I mean, China's done it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like they've shut the internet down.
Do you think they could
know what I mean?
now? It feels
Shut
like
it
in America,
down?
it would be like putting a genie back in a bottle to do what China's done with the internet because we're so far. I mean, there's things now that the government, there's websites they can't get down.
Well, look at here. Well, the reason I don't think so, and Ralph, you could probably everything you do for work in the last two jobs has been regulated by the internet.
Correct.
I mean, there's so many privatized corporations that have to have the internet functioning for them to function. I don't think that that.
I'd say 90%.
Yeah, you couldn't do. There's so many corporations that what they do, if they didn't have internet access or if there was no functional internet, their company would go defunct.
So, me personally, I don't think. It's just too much money at stake. Too much money. I mean, you think about the stock market.
Yeah.
you can't, like, without the internet.
You don't
like,
think
what
they
it-
proved it during COVID, though, that they don't care about crashing the stock market? Because it creates, the thing that I look at is I don't think that they would shut it down for good, but I mean the upside for financial gain that it poses for them to crash the stock market and then allow it to build back is innumerable, the money that they can make.
And I guess that's the thing. How long are you talking about shutting it down for?
But the thing is, like, when you say shut it down, you have to define what that means.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to shut down the internet? Do you mean like we take all satellites offline? Because, like, you know, are you going to tell every provider, Comcast, all of them, you're going to tell all of them, just stop providing for your companies? I mean, if you think about it logically, it would have to be in some form of a fake or it would have to be like some kind of a fake attack or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if people were talking about
Like Russia's getting in through the internet.
yeah,
We
or
need
the
to shut it down.
pipeline thing that they did.
Yeah.
You know, when they did all this thing with, like, and then they had the supply chain issues with the trucks and all that stuff. You know, there's a lot of people who believe that stuff was a farce, you know. And so how are you going to do it? You have to do it in such a way that there's not an outcry, because you don't want riots. You don't want people to just like going off because you've just stripped their freedoms from them or whatever. So, you know, I've heard people talk about EMPs and all kinds of different stuff, you know, using electromagnetic pulse bombs and stuff to shut down technology. I think, though, with all, like you said, with all the money at stake and these corporations that depend on all these different things for their money, you know, it is a big deal. Now, with the election coming, I mean, you may have, I think that's the bigger thing, is the sharing of data and information.
Yeah.
That they hate. They hate the fact that people have a way to speak out and be heard, that they can't limit it. They can't stop it.
Yeah, it's like the internet, YouTube alone is a greater, and I really do believe this, is
And
a
now
greater
X.
technological advancement in human history than the Gutenberg press.
Oh, it's touched far more people.
Right, and it's not that I have to, if I wanted to get information out, if this podcast had to get out, we don't have to like arrange the letters, press it, put 1 million copies out.
Well, even if we didn't have to use the Gutenberg press, imagine just using like actual printers,
Right.
to like print all the copies, even if it was like a regular offset printer, and print the copies, and then you got to mail them to everybody, and then hope they get there, and that there's not somebody at the post office that's working for the government that's keeping all the stuff behind. I mean, that's not a conspiracy. They did that to Jimmy Swaggart. The post office took bags and bags and bags and bags of his partner mail and threw them into the bayou because they didn't like his ministry. So the post office literally, and there was prosecution for this, but took bags and bags of his partner mail and just tossed them into the swamps of Louisiana. And they found out later. It was like, if you, there's many steps that you have to get through: printing the data that you want to, mailing it, making sure it gets to the people, making sure they open it and read it. You know, there's YouTube. It goes around the world instantly.
How many monthly users does YouTube have?
Well, you know, it's the largest search engine aside from Google in the world.
Right.
There's nothing bigger, and Google owns it. So, I mean, they are it. I think the bigger thing for me,
2.7 billion active users
a month.
Yep.
I mean, think about that. Like,
It's insane.
Oh my gosh.
that's more. That's what is that? A third of the world? That's a third of the world's
That's
population.
insane.
So, but think about this: YouTube will put the clamps on people.
Yep.
Like, they do that. But what a step that was for Elon to buy Twitter,
Right.
rebrand it. Here's what a lot of people don't know, which I think this will be interesting technology-wise and for freedom of speech. Twitter, before Elon Musk bought Twitter, it was already the owner of Vimeo.com, which Vimeo was YouTube's greatest competitor, like in the early thousands.
Yep.
And it was actually a more beautiful platform than YouTube was then. But it just, YouTube, probably because it was bought by Google, became the much larger beast. But Twitter still owns Vimeo, which is a full-out platform for video uploading and sharing, just like YouTube. It's just an alternate platform. All the large apps that ministries and other things are using now for their video, their own personal Netflix. Hillsong uses it. I mean, there's tons. There's tons of large. TBN uses it.
Right.
The apps are built by a Vimeo company. It's called Vimeo ITT.
Right.
So they already have the ability to build like Netflix-style video hosting apps, and Vimeo is still a platform you can upload and share videos from.
Right.
Now that Elon has control of X, what's to stop him from revamping Vimeo into like a YouTube competitor where it allows people to post their it allows people to post their content without fear of being clamped down upon because you said something that was against what the global elites want said publicly.
Yeah.
And I think if he does that right there, because that's the reason, if you don't know, that's the reason he rebranded Twitter to X, was it was going to be like an umbrella.
App.
Yeah, an everything app, like an umbrella for everything he wanted to do, which, then they signed Tucker Carlson. Why would you take a big step like that if you weren't thinking about going that direction?
Right.
When Elon Musk bought Twitter, I honestly thought that there was going to be like a mass exodus from YouTube, and there really wasn't by and large. Pretty much all the channels that always through COVID were like, if there was another option, we would take it. By and large, they pretty much didn't leave. They all stayed on YouTube. Unless they got banned, they stayed. And I was kind of like, man, I wonder, why all these, I really thought there'd be a mass exodus, but it kind of dawned on me the other day. I was talking to my dad, and he's like the least conspiracy theorist guy you'll ever talk to. He's just like he watches the news every day. He's just like a normal, and he was like, man, I got to be honest with you. All this stuff I see in the news and like they're talking about Elon Musk on the news with Twitter and everything. He goes, it feels like some kind of like an evil villain plot in a movie. He's like, you got guys like, because they played a clip, I guess, in the news where Elon Musk, or they showed a tweet where he was like, basically saying, you could never get to me to kill me. I can see a mile away from the Tesla factory where I live, like when he first bought Twitter. And he's like, this feels like a movie. This guy thinks because he bought a social media platform, they would kill him. And I was thinking like, yes, they would kill him for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
Here's my question, though, because, you got to look at like if YouTube has 2.7 billion active users, then what percentage, if Elon made a platform or vamped up X to be comparable to YouTube, like if they were just one for one, and it was like as easy to use, as beautiful as the platform, the same thing. In the same way that like when Rumble became popular, think about the only people that went to Rumble were conservatives, were the red pill community.
Right.
Do you think that it's an echo chamber? You go onto Rumble, you will not find any like diverse opinion. It's just one community.
Right.
So
but Rumble was a much smaller thing than Twitter is.
Right. But the people that are happy with YouTube's terms of service are half the users. So like, do you think that if Elon does that, then it's just going to become an echo chamber of conservative thought? Because what liberal is going to be like? You'd be like, no, I love what Elon's doing. I'm going to go over to X.
I don't think they have to go over to X. I think they're already there. Like all these liberals are already on Twitter. They're already tweeting nonstop. They're already using the platform. If it's just one big platform, they'll use it. But here's the real question. Why would people not use both? It's not going to be an either or situation.
Right.
It's going to be an and. People are going to be on YouTube and on X. They're going to be on both. And the people that need to put their broadcasts on X for the point of freedom of speech are going to do it. And their critics will be there to watch their videos and make fun of them and all that.
That's true, actually.
That's true. And stuff. And the people that support them will be there. I mean, look at Tucker Carlson. Look at the you could say, there's only conservatives support him and all that. Look at the views that he's getting on X.
He
on
had
the
more
Trump
views than the presidential debate.
Oh, by far.
Way more views.
Oh yeah.
In that like that quick though, when I checked it right after, it was at 2 million views already.
Yeah.
So I mean, like look at the views he's getting on X and stuff. Like, it makes CNBC and all these others look like a joke. Like it makes them look like an absolute joke. Rogan's podcast makes these things look like a joke.
After he had what's that guy's name? The doctor from CNN. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh man.
Oh, Sanjay Gupta.
Sanjay Gupta.
Sanjay
After
Gupta,
he had him on, and Don Lemon started running his mouth and doing what he does all the time. Rogan was like, "Your audience is a quarter of the size of mine. Like you don't want to have this argument." And then I just saw, the Nelk Boys just went after. What's the late night guy that we were
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert. That he started saying, isn't it weird that these young teenage kids in sweatshirts are the only ones that get Trump on their podcast? They can't even identify that he's using them to get to the younger demographic. These idiots don't know what's going on. And even them, as young kids from Canada, they were like, our audience quadruples yours. You have no room to. Who is seeing this? Is no one compared to the people that saw our podcast. With Trump. So it doesn't matter.
263 million views
On which video?
on the Trump video.
On the Trump video.
Tucker
Think
and
about
Trump.
that. 200. Now, just for reference for everybody, 263 million views on that. The Super Bowl gets 500 million views.
Wow.
How many people watched the World Cup last year?
There's a lot. There's a lot of people that watch the World Cup.
Just because it's a
It's global.
Sure.
But think about, we're talking America right now.
Yeah.
Think about the Super Bowl. 500. It's like 550.
Yeah.
So in one video that has nothing to do with. I mean,
I'm interested to see
260 some
because he did that at on the same
How long
night.
has that been up, by the way?
6 days.
6
so
days.
in the first week.
Not even.
Yeah.
Short of the first week, 263 million views. Like, I'm telling you right now that if they, and I think they would, why would they not move that direction? If they move that direction, it's going to, I mean, that was like a massive move for Elon Musk to do that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I know the point you were making was, what if they don't come over to the platform? But think of what they did. What was the platform they used before Rumble that everybody tried to jump on and they shut them down because of the terms of service? What was that?
The one that Apple took off the App Store and everything?
Everyone took it down because it was for people that wanted to go and be conservative, but they said it was like hate speech.
Yeah. What was that?
Dang.
That goes to show you.
Yeah. We don't even remember.
That's crazy.
But like, it was before Rumble.
Yeah.
And
I don't even know how to
everybody
look
was
that
jumping
up.
on it. And then all of a sudden, they just took it down from the App Store because they said it was like hate speech and stuff
Apple
like that.
and Amazon took it
right?
down.
Yeah, they both took it down. So, but here's the cool thing, though. So, in order for them to do that, I mean, they would have to do that to Twitter. They would have to take X down,
Right.
For it to. But here's the crazy thing. Now, here's where I think this is a big deal. If they wanted to go, basically, you'd have to go to war with Elon Musk and all of his corporations. And here's the thing that's crazy about that is, and I said this for years regarding churches, because if you're going to get into that level of persecution of churches, right, you're going to say like, okay, well, they're going to shut down digital payments, but then what if they do it to the place where we can't live stream our services anymore? And then they get to the place where like, then we'll have to come up with our own live stream platform where we'll live stream our services, which means we have to have our own servers. Then you say, well, yeah, but what if then they say it's hate speech, we're going to cut internet off from your church. Like your church can't have an internet connection.
Right.
Then you have to develop your own internet connection.
Your own servers.
Your own, not just servers, your own access to the internet,
Satellites.
which means you have to have your own satellites. Elon already has all that stuff.
Right.
It's not like he's got to get it. He has it all.
Starlink, is that what it is?
Starlink.
Starlink.
So he already has satellites.
Yeah.
If he needed to set up his own network or infrastructure, he could do that. He could already do that. And aren't they talking about releasing like the like a Tesla phone or something like that?
He was it's hard to tell with him. You don't know like if he's just trolling,
You know
he's
what I
just
did
doing,
hear
like,
him say
memes.
that I've heard him mention it on a couple different podcasts. He said that his goal with Starlink is for there to be open and available Wi-Fi like
Free.
all over. Like just outside wherever you are, you can connect to the Wi-Fi on those satellites anywhere.
You can
That's
already
like-
do that. There's like communities of like those people who like live in their vans.
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't.
personally,
I mean,
but
you look like the kind of guy.
I've seen him.
But like they make like it's like the tiny home thing, but in a van. But they
Yeah.
like deck out their van. It looks awesome. You can already buy like a Starlink that just connects to like you could be anywhere. You could be in the middle of New Mexico and have a Starlink and have perfect internet.
Like
perfect.
hotspots, right? Like
Yeah, but
AT&T hotspots.
But even with that, like that's relying on cell towers, not satellites.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's true. That's crazy. It's next level.
So wherever you are on the globe, you can have perfect internet.
So where do you think then? Because obviously Rumble is, in my opinion, they'll be gone within 3 years. Where do you think like a Spotify falls in the whole thing? Because Spotify's done a kind of a good job at like I feel kind of like
interesting.
propping themselves up in the background. Where I don't know if they're viable. That maybe Elon just goes, listen, I need to absorb them in order to do what you're talking about with Vimeo. But I feel, especially when they signed Rogan,
How many
because
years did they sign him for, by the
he
way?
is. I don't know what the length of the contract was, but for $100 million, it had to have been a pretty good contract. But I mean, you think about just the viewership that he brings to that platform. If everybody else left Spotify tomorrow, Rogan's viewers would be enough to keep that company alive.
But why do you think that they'll have to do something in regards to Spotify?
Well, I just wonder, like, if it gets to the point where like YouTube really clamps down again, like say we go into another COVID restriction, this time they don't mess around, they start like kicking everybody's accounts. Well, now you're going to have two options again.
Well,
with
Spotify's
Spotify.
going to do the same.
You think so?
They did it to Rogan.
Well, they did that with him when they were talking about like the N-word, and then I guess they did take a couple.
No,
of
there was
doctors
more than
down.
that.
What'd they do?
They took a couple of his doctor episodes down.
Yep.
But they put him back up because he caught
Yeah,
them.
but only because there was outcry.
Right.
That was already their thing. They were already clamping down on
Which
Rogan.
is
It's just that.
interesting, though.
But think about it. It's only because his platform's so large.
Right.
If it was
Yeah.
anyone else other
They
than
would've
Rogan,
just
it'd be
been like,
stayed
no.
gone.
Yeah.
Because like when he interviewed those two main doctors, the one was the cardiologist.
Yeah.
Malone.
Yep, Robert Malone, and the other one was what's that dude's name? But they both gave their thoughts on all of this stuff with the medications and all the stuff, and they got taken down like that. And then they were like blacklisted from their communities for like the things they were saying and the things they said on Rogan. And it's like they were. Do you know what's crazy? That cardiologist was Robert Malone, the cardiologist.
The most published.
Most published.
Yeah.
They said like 80% of papers on cardiology reference his work.
Wow.
80% of papers, like, it's not like he was just some Joe Schmo that had some ideas.
Right.
He's the most published cardiologist in the field.
Was he the guy that was on record as being involved in the filing for the patent on RNA vaccines?
Yes, he was. Well, wait, there was two guys. There were two guys Rogan interviewed that were doctors. One was Robert Malone.
I can't think of the other guy's name.
Look, one of them was on the he was like, I know this stuff back and front because I was one of the names on the patents filing
Right.
for the RNA. So like, it's not like they were just some Joe Schmo, but look, because everybody says trust the science. Here you have a well-renowned scientist that's published.
Peter McCullough.
Peter McCullough.
right.
Yep.
So published that 80% of the work in his field cites his work. Trust the science. He's a scientist with published work that everyone's citing and has patents on the very thing that the government's, or not the government, but like that Big Pharma is using. And he knows what he's talking about. He knows how it works. He knows everything, the ins and outs of it. And they're trying to cancel him, saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he said this: if I can't speak about this, who can?
Yeah.
If
The
I
foremost
can't,
expert.
yeah.
So let me ask you this then: do you guys think that people will fall right back in line again with what if the next thing isn't COVID? If they try to roll something like that out again in the fall and people don't roll with it, and then they move to something else, do you think that if they change out of the vein of like a virus and they go to something else, the whole population will fall right in line again with whatever the next attack is?
Well, first of all, I've been praying against it. But
Yeah.
don't you think people have woken up, Ralph?
I think people have woken up, but I do think I don't think they'll do the same attack again, the same way. I think maybe you rebrand it, maybe you have a different approach, but the ultimate goal is the same, and I think people will buy it again, hook, line, and sinker.
I was reading that the general consensus is that if another virus rolls out, that this time it'll be one that actually would have like real death toll numbers, so that the people that were, quote unquote, waking up to this, everybody else would be able to be like, see,
this
it's
is
back
different.
again,
Yeah.
and now people are actually dying. But the problem is, like, I would wonder, they were telling us that people were dying last time. So, like,
And
I
misrepresented the numbers,
right.
which
So
was
I wonder
proven
to
later.
what extent will people believe the nonsense, but and say like, oh, it's just a conspiracy, before people really wake up to the fact that like there's less conspiracy now. I mean, you look at even like grand scale things like Bohemian Grove. If you would have told somebody about Bohemian Grove 30 years ago or 20 years ago, that you would have sounded like you were talking about the scene from a sci-fi movie.
You got to explain that.
Bohemian Grove is like a place where all the elites in the world go to like sacrifice to effigies and stuff like that. In California. And I think was it Alex Jones that originally blew that whole thing open?
There were multiple people.
Well, Alex Jones got the footage of it. He snuck in, and he
no,
got
but
the footage.
who's the author that does Brad Meltzer? Brad Meltzer did a whole thing on it.
Did he?
Yeah. There's multiple people that have looked at it. But I mean, tons of politicians go there, not just American politicians, worldwide politicians and dignitaries and stuff like that. And they say it's more like just like a gathering place, kind of a fraternity of but whatever. The thing I'm thinking about when you say that about people waking up and people being still believing that stuff like hook, line, and sinker, to me, the thought process on that is like, even if you don't say like conspiracy theory, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory. Like, look at what they said. Look at what experts said during and after what happened with COVID. They came to the conclusion it actually was not a good thing that we locked populations down. It was a bad thing. In the countries where they did it the most, like Australia and South Africa, places like that, they determined it was a bad thing, not a good thing that we locked populations down. Right. They went and when the New York Post publishes that masks were basically ineffective in the spread of COVID-19. Masks were ineffective. That's not a Republican paper. That's the New York Post that did that, published what multiple universities discovered in investigation. So the whole point is it's not that you have to believe a conspiracy theory to see that wrong moves were made. Just because there's something out there doesn't mean that they took the right steps. I mean, obviously we understand manipulation and control, but you don't have to take those steps in order to deal with things and still be okay. You know what I mean? And to strip people's freedoms, you know, my prayer is people are fully awake and understand. And you think it's just a coincidence it's coming back around during another election cycle?
Absolutely not.
I feel like that same way, and I feel like kind of what Ralph said. I want to believe that people won't, but there's certain things that have happened over the last couple of years that I look at, you know, I think that the government did a phenomenal job with the whole Epstein thing because they took the opposite approach. Obviously, that's to the point now where it's like a cliche to talk about. But instead of trying to hide it, they knew like it was coming out. They flooded the media with like the memes and the jokes and the Epstein didn't kill himself. Like, and they got it to the point where it got to be such a laughable thing. But if you look at it, there should be nothing that happens before that gets resolved. If you look at the grand scope of what that really entails and like the backline on who that affects in the lives, there should be no other trials happening until that whole thing is resolved.
They fully publicized the Johnny Depp and what was her name, Amber Heard.
Yeah.
And then
now it's on Netflix.
Hand-drawn sketches of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
Yeah,
on, like,
where
the
is
back of a
Ghislaine
napkin.
Maxwell? And how was none of that? You know, those are the kinds of things that make you just sit back and say, like, it's absolutely ridiculous. A fully televised Depp Heard hearing, and now it's on Netflix as a series that you can watch. And like we see nothing from Ghislaine Maxwell. We see nothing about Hunter Biden's laptop. We see nothing about the Epstein documents and the flight manifests and all those things. It's like,
The
dude,
chef that was just at the was it the Obama's house that their chef died swimming?
Oh yeah.
yeah, he was kayaking, I think.
Yeah.
And then like capsized and he couldn't swim or something like that.
Did you ever see the
Remember that time I took the youth group to the beach?
Bad idea. You live and you learn.
Ralph told me afterwards. I was a new youth pastor, and Ralph was like, you know, what would you say the percentage of our youth group that was black?
What? 80?
Was it 80?
Really?
8 out of 10.
And I was like, hey guys, let's go to the beach early in the day when the sun's high in the sky. Ralph had to talk to me afterwards. He was like, Pastor Ted. Do you remember telling me that?
What did
I
you
do
say?
remember. It's like, it's not a good look.
He told me, he was like, black people don't go to the
We
beach.
don't go to the beach. Like, I lived in Virginia Beach for how many, 20, 25 years? I've been to the beach, a handful of times. One of them was with you.
Yeah, so then we just decided to go roller skating.
And then what else? Did we do bowling or something?
Bowling. We stayed indoors out of the scorching.
Guys, want to play beach volleyball? Get some Starbucks afterwards.
Guys, let's go get a tan. And I was like, no.
Let's get a tan.
Ralph was like,
living
I'm not
right
trying to
back.
darken this milk chocolate.
Keep this right where it's at.
I almost Kevin Garnetted you. But yeah, you live and you learn.
For sure.
Yeah, Alanis Morissette was right. But I'm just my prayer's been against it, obviously. Like, you know, I'm praying, and of course, you know the church is going to always function and increase and do what God's called the church to do. Jesus was clear: you can't destroy the church. Mm-hmm. You can't cause the church to diminish. I'll build my church, is what Jesus said, and the gates of hell will not prevail. So.
We saw that. I mean, we've been to a bunch of churches where even though a lot of people were complaining about COVID, I've been with you and heard many pastors say people didn't like it, but COVID was the best time for us. We grew in numbers, we grew in money, we grew in every, you know.
Yep, grew in every
so
metric.
The people that stood strong came out the other side looking completely different.
God blessed the churches that stood strong and stayed open.
Yeah.
Blessed them abundantly.
It's a very exciting time, especially to like. There's just so much going on. It's an exciting time to have started a church. It's an exciting time to step into ministry, to do a ton of stuff. Because after 2020, this stuff got real. Like, it got real to people. Mm-hmm. And so the people that are there at church, the people that are there at the revivals are serious. They're not. That was a
big deal. Like, you know, not just the online stuff, which we blew up during that time and just doubled in partnership and everything like that because people were hungry. They wanted to be connected to a ministry that was speaking faith and the spirit of faith. But like you said, at the revivals, the meetings and stuff, people were coming for a touch from God.
Yeah.
Like they weren't playing church. They were if they were there,
Yeah.
they were there for a touch.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, traveling, how many of those people do you think, because obviously meetings and things like that grew, how many of those people do you think initially just came because it was almost like rebelling? It's like, I'm sticking it to the man. Like, I'm like, oh, they don't want us to gather, but, I'm going to go out where people are gathering.
Yeah.
How much, in your travels did you see where you felt like people were like, maybe newly saved, new to church and to especially, in the, with, oh my goodness, I can't think. What am I? Oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. But how many?
Like in the Pentecostal charismatic
yeah,
movement?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, that's a funny thing because I think you saw a very specific kind of person come to church during lockdowns.
Yeah.
Like that, just to me, it was a very specific kind of person because the people that weren't for it, they were staying home no matter what.
Yeah.
And even early on, when people that were staying open, it's funny because they're all like, oh, we're praying for you, stay safe during all this. My uncle in West Virginia had them turning on him like in within weeks because he never shut down. So the people that were like, hey, y'all better be careful. We're praying for you. Be very careful though. The same people that are jumping online. I hope you all die. I hope you die from the virus. Like it's like, oh, thanks. I thought you were praying for us. But it turned hard. So it's not like you were seeing those people come out and be like, they stayed open, so I'm just going to put on a mask and a face shield and a thing and come out and double mask. They stayed home. So that means the ones that did come, if I can remember correctly, we never stopped traveling all the way through 2020, 2021, never stopped. You weren't seeing the masked up people come. You were seeing the people that were like, we're going for this. We're not like bending our knee.
And if you had a masked person or family, they would leave by minute 43. So
there was like no lukewarm people. Even you would think if people did come out, like, well, I still want to go to church, but I'm going to be cautious. They weren't there because when you'd call people forward to lay hands on them, the whole crowd would.
Everybody
still
would come.
Yeah.
And they'd stand shoulder to shoulder, no social distancing, all of that.
And then, did you feel like you saw an increase of miracles because you had people who were like, I guess at that time you would classify them as what, radical? Like they were like real faith people. Do you feel like?
Yeah, we definitely saw miracles. I mean, one of the things that I look at with that is it's not just about being on fire for God. Like when you receive from the Lord, obviously it takes faith. So it's one thing to be like, I'm standing up against the government. It's another thing completely to have faith in God's word and understand the promises and covenant of God. So yeah, we saw that just from people that like weren't willing to back off Christianity. I believe God rewarded those people.
yeah.
But as zealous as you get, and as I'm not standing for this antichrist system, you still have to have faith in the word of God. You still have to know what the word of God says. So we did see that. We did see that. And I'll tell you, that was a very interesting thing because I'd made up in my mind, like, I'm not going to, I don't care if there's ever a pastor that's like, hey, now listen, I know you're here for revival, but I'd like you to wear a mask into the sanctuary. I was like, bro, I am gone. I am gone so quick. Or if you have an issue and if I made up in my mind, if I had one person tell me one thing in their office before we went out, like, now listen, I appreciate if you just don't lay hands on the people or anything. I'm gone, bro. I'm gone. Like, I'm not doing that. I didn't come here to do like a halfway revival, you know? I'm just not. So thankfully, all the people I'm connected with, not one of them said that stuff to me, like don't lay hands on anybody, don't call them to the altar. What they did is if they didn't want backlash from their local governments or whatever, once we got to that place in the service, if they didn't, they never said, let's not do that. They said, hey, we'll just turn the cameras off and do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we did. So I was thankful for that. Like the people, that's why it's important to know who you're connected to, like who's truly in your company, if you will.
Yeah.
And stick with who's of like faith.
Yeah.
And not just, that's why I'm not for like making relationships everywhere with it's like, I know who my group is. I know who my company is. I stick with people of like faith.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like there was like a couple camps or there was. I feel like before 2020 was a spectrum. If we're talking about within, I'm not
If there's a spectrum, everyone's on it.
Knew you were going to go there.
It's true. I'm not talking about that spectrum.
Do you think people are born gifted though?
No, we're not having this conversation.
They are.
We're not having this
It's
conversation.
a
already
twinkling
been-
in their eye.
Yeah.
It's already been settled.
I just see when they do math.
I'm telling you.
There was probably
We should pose that to the people, though.
Should we?
do a poll?
Part 2.
we should do that whole conversation. I will come prepared.
Alex is gonna come with data.
Yeah, I'm coming out with spreadsheets and clipboards and easels.
I'm coming with
I'm
young
gonna bring
kids.
people in. That's what I'm bringing people
Look
in.
at this one.
Look at, tell me he's not special. Tell me he's not gifted.
Into his eyes.
Listen to him play that piano.
I'm telling you.
Look at the way he just did that algebraic equation.
All right. We're going to get to heaven, and I'm going to ask God.
You think God's gonna be like, "You're right, Ralph"?
I know he's like,
Ralph, you
You were
nailed
right.
it.
No,
Those
you were
other
right.
guys
Yeah,
didn't
because
know.
God's gonna be like, "Yeah, you're right. I made some people just really stupid, and others like super smart. There's
Super-
nothing they can do about it." Sorry, Ralph.
Those other guys, Ralph, had it wrong, but you,
my friend, we're right.
we're getting there. We're getting there.
You saw the twinkling.
The day's coming very soon. The day's coming very soon.
I'm sorry. What were you saying before we got off on
Nothing
spectrums
important.
And
I was just saying that I feel like before 2020 there was a spectrum within the charismatic circle where as long as you classified yourself charismatic and you believe in the gifts, you're in, right? But then afterwards that kind of like really divided that.
divide.
And so like the people
Well,
that are not cool
it
with
showed people. It showed if you really believed that you
like,
had
do
a
you
covenant
believe
with God.
It's like,
Right.
do you believe in the gifts in principle or in action?
you. Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Like, there's people
It's
we were-
theoretical until you have to use it.
Right. There was. We just talked about a podcaster on the phone like an hour ago that you can be on paper charismatic, but that doesn't mean you're in the camp that we're in. Like, I mean, it's just not. It's just not. You're not in the same camp.
Well,
that
it's
we're
what
in.
it's what James said.
Yeah.
You know, faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
Show me your works, and I'll show you my works, or my faith by my works.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be something that backs up what you say you believe.
Yeah.
If you say you believe something, it should be acted out in your life and spoken out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of faith is released by speaking and actions. I can't just go around telling everybody how full of faith I am and my actions don't back that up. Like it's a proof. Like what I say and what I do with my life are proof that my faith exists. Because otherwise, faith is theoretical, but James says that's dead faith.
Right.
It's
Theoretical faith is dead.
It's always people that believe differently than we do too, because they always. What I mean is like they'll put a different stress on it. They'll be like, well, "We believe pretty much the same. It's just a few small things," and it's like there really is no small things about how we believe. Everything is important for a reason.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
I just heard a clip of Bill Burr the other day. He's professing like, "I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the Bible. The only thing I have a hard time with is the resurrection." It's like that's not a small thing to have a hard
Then
time.
you're
with.
not a Christian.
There is no Christianity without
Christianity.
it. But he was talking to Rogan about it, and he's like, I believe it, and you need to get into it, and you need to be part of it. It makes me
get
feel so
into
good. But I just have one problem with the small thing. And it's like, but it's funny to us, but then you look at it on the outside. I've talked to people in other, like, sects of religion, and they're like, oh, I just don't believe in, like, this or that. And they try to make
Yeah.
it such a small thing. But
Mormons,
it's like, there
they'll be
is
like,
no.
We're the same.
Right.
Me and you.
Yeah, I know.
I believe in Jesus. You believe in Jesus.
Right.
You're like, we're
Yeah, the
same.
resurrection is not a small thing.
Yeah.
No, that's a large. But I mean, any of it, whether it's speaking in tongues or anything, they try to say like it's just this one small difference, and it's like there really isn't a small difference.
Yeah, it's not like I've had people say that to me. Literally, they'll be like, because they don't. I think people are uncomfortable when you focus so much on the power of the Holy Spirit. But it's like I just preach Jesus. Like that's your line is like, I know you get into all that stuff. I like to just preach Jesus. It's like Jesus preached the Holy
Yeah,
Spirit.
right.
So you can't even preach Jesus without preaching the Holy Spirit. It's like mind blowing to me. But you're right. I mean, people try to use, but then they minimize the importance of things that God maximized its value in His Word. And that's why, the term full gospel has been, some people look at it like it's some kind of derogatory term that's creating class systems within the body of Christ. But it's just a term describing people who don't cut truths out of the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting truths out of the Bible because I think they're defunct or they've expired. Like, I believe that the Bible is still fully functional, and I believe that everything Jesus said and that the apostles did and the early church did is still available today and functional today. I'm not cutting it out because of personal experience or because of cultural pressure or whatever, even religious pressure. I'm full gospel to the core. I'm not just charismatic. I'm Pentecostal, word of faith, charismatic to the core. You could not, I mean, at this point, you could not, I could sit down in front with just the Bible. I don't need any books. I don't need anybody's authored books. I could sit down with just the Bible. You could not talk me out of being a Pentecostal, word of faith, charismatic. You can't. I've read the arguments. I've looked at the people that are critics. Very weak, very weak. You could not, with everything in me, you could not talk me out of that. And I'm a person that analyzes and thinks, and you could not. I mean, there'd be no way. There'd be absolutely. I'm so rooted in understanding, and it's not because I've closed myself into a bubble where it's like all he's ever known is Pentecostal charisma. I read the critics. I read their books. I read their work. I want to know what they know. I want to hear their arguments. I want to hear everything they have to say. And I've read them, and I've thought that's weak. That's extremely weak. It's a straw man theology. It's weak. I mean, it's weak to the core. And then you look at what their version of Christianity actually produces. Nothing. Produces nothing. Produces no. You don't see people getting demons cast out. You don't see people being healed. You don't see people being baptized in the Holy Spirit. You don't see miracles happening. Even their missionaries.
That's always my thing. Is like, how do you explain this away? That's always my thing. Is the experience and the evidence. How are you going to debate this away? And
you know, it's funny. People always come was like, well, our Christianity is not based on evidence. It's based on the Word of God. It's like, well, then why did Jesus use evidence?
Right.
Jesus pointed to his evidence to John's disciples that he was the Messiah. And then he said, you'll receive the Holy Spirit and you'll be filled with power and you'll become my witnesses, someone that can produce evidence of my resurrection. How do you, and then, you know, that's how he used the apostles. That's how he used the early church. How do you go around that? Because these signs shall follow them.
Right.
The works that I do, you will do also, in greater works than these. It's how he set it up.
And you know, it's even a worse argument than building my theology from experience is building my theology from a lack of experience.
Yeah.
And that's what cessationism is.
Yep.
Because when it comes down to it, they really don't have a lot of biblical. I mean, they don't have any really. They don't have even enough verses that they could twist.
No.
So what they default to in all of their books and all of their debates and everything is I just don't see what you're telling me. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't see
it's
it
like,
happening.
It's like you're telling me I base my experience off of experience, but you base your theology off of lack of experience.
And arguments from silence are the weakest arguments.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what's funny to me is when they'll say stuff like, well, you can see clearly how the miraculous faded out in the New Testament. That by the end of the New Testament, it kind of faded out. Because even Paul said, you know, I left Trophimus sick in Miletus. So you could see that it had faded out by that time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you're probably right about that. It's like, people are so dumb. And I think that's a good place to hang our hat. People are so dumb.
People are
so dumb.
People are.
Maybe we should call this episode.
people are
so dumb.
Well, it's as I suspected.
The Holy Ghost has lifted off.
This podcast.
He's done here. Might as well quit.
spectrum.
All right, guys.
Well, you could tell he was fading out.
Yeah, he was fading it. Now he's completely ceased.
Cessationist podcast.